Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, that's better. I'm Andy Linehan, President of the City Club. Welcome to today's program, which features Multnomah County Commission Chair Diane Linn, who will talk about how the county is surviving one of the most trying periods in recent economic history here in Oregon. First, I have the usual few items of City Club business. I wanted to welcome a City Club president of several years past, Evan Kennedy, who's sitting at this table. Perhaps you'll stand up, Evan. Evan Kennedy was president of City Club in 1968. Next Friday, June 27th, join us for an overview of the recently completed Oregon Business Plan. The Oregon Business Plan has received unprecedented attention and support from both public and private sectors and is seen by many as the cornerstone to our economic recovery. Our guest speakers next week, and this will be at the MAC, are Ron Timpe, CEO of Standard Insurance, Kurt Roberts, who's Nike's president of Global Strategic Planning, Charlie Hopewell, who's president of Nielsen Manufacturing, and Scott Gibson, who's CEO of Gibson Enterprises. This week's bulletin promised you that your copy of the new membership directory would be issued with next week's bulletin. There's been a printing delay, and that will come out in the bulletin of July 4th. I want to invite everyone here to come to the City Club's tribute to outgoing executive Nancy Hedin. This will happen next Thursday night at 5:30 at the Benson Hotel. It will involve refreshments, good spirits, and wishing Nancy Hedin the best in her new career. If you plan to attend, yes. Yes, he is. If you plan to attend, though, please complete the registration form, which is in this week's bulletin, or contact Suzanne Jeffries at the City Club offices. Broadcasts of City Club programs this quarter are made possible in part by corporate sponsorship from Wells Fargo Bank, Legacy Health Systems, and Weyerhaeuser Company Foundation. We're grateful for their support. As I thought about how to introduce Multnomah County Commission Chair Diane Linn, a number of metaphors, not very poetic but nevertheless descriptive, came to mind. We could say that Diane Linn has been the calm center at the eye of a hurricane of budgetary bad news. Or we could say she was the lead physician in the delivery room team that brought ballot measure 2648 to life and restored some of the planned budget cuts to education, public safety, and social services. I was tempted to call her a major league player in the settlement with the Portland Teachers Union, which saved this school year, but thought that maybe the baseball metaphor would apply better to other political players in that event. Whatever words one uses, though, they all describe a situation of dire economic stress, creative thinking, and heroic efforts. Who would ever have guessed the county government could be so dramatic? Please welcome County Chair Diane Linn.
Good afternoon. It is really wonderful to be with you all here today. People who are engaged, involved, like to listen to public policy discussion, enjoy politics, know what important work we do at the county, know how hard our work at the county is to do. And I'm just here to tell you that's just not always the case with everyone. I was driving around recently in the car with my fiance, and yes, I said fiance, and we were discussing politics. We were talking about the economy, we were talking about job creation, we were talking about education. We were talking about what the public's perception is of us in government. And we were talking about the cost of sending kids to college. We were discussing this, high-level, fascinating public policy discussion. And in the back seat that day, I had my great nephew with us, and he was sitting very quietly, being patient and listening, and then he offered up his editorial observation to the conversation. And just at the fever pitch of this discussion, we hear from the back seat little Tanner say, "Boring." I turned back to him, I said, "Tanner, how could this be boring? This is very interesting, very important stuff." And he lifts the little eyebrows out at me and he says, "Boring." So As you all know, 3-year-olds aren't the only ones that consider public policy discussions not all that interesting. We are bombarded with messages from state and local government, and we are numbed by national rhetoric. People are tired of it. According to Webster's, boredom is the definition of boredom is the state of being weary and restless through lack of interest. We live in times when we simply cannot afford to be bored, and the lack of interest is not an acceptable position to be in. Fortunately for Multnomah County, we are bucking that trend. Residents of this county are clearly very interested and very engaged. Just a few short months ago, as all of you know, we faced the worst case scenario, the shortest school year in the country. Skyrocketing unemployment, seniors unable to pay for vital medications, and a compromised ability to house criminals. We were experiencing the cascading effects of cutbacks at the state and federal and local level. We were facing the kind of crisis where people have a tendency to throw their hands up and say, there's just really nothing we can do, or we'll just ride it out at this point in time. But there is a profound effect of reducing public services. In cutting services, especially treatment, preventive care, and early intervention, the price tag to you and I actually is much greater in the long run. Government is just simply not like the private sector. We can't just eliminate a service or a product to balance our bottom line and know that our customers are able to go someplace else for the same product or service in the marketplace. For our customers, there's no other store they can go for drug treatment at a reduced price. If we close up shop, our clients can't go down to the mall and pick up another in-home care package for a senior relative in their family or a prevention program for a delinquent teen. The marketplace simply does not mass produce jail beds. There is a person at the end of these budget cuts, and almost always there's a family attached to that person. I'd like to tell you about one such family here today and share with you that our collective investment can save lives and, surprisingly, save a lot of taxpayer dollars. I first met Bobby when he and other Recovery Association members came and testified in front of the Board of County Commissioners. We were on a third round of revenue shortfalls and still reeling from state budget cuts. Even after finding all kinds of efficiencies, cutting administration, we once again faced the prospect of having to cut or eliminate direct services to real people. Bobby's story was particularly moving. It spanned the entire spectrum of what we do here at the county. The story is about public safety. The story is about human services. It's also about hope. And it's about how a small investment can make have a sizable benefit for a family and for the taxpayers. Bobby told us about a life of crime and drug abuse, 22 years of incarceration at the expense of taxpayers. And his wife, Patty, had a similar tale to tell. She racked up 4 years in the state penitentiary and was also an addict. Bobby's crimes and victims had victims attached to them. He was manufacturing and selling methamphetamines. He was feeding and creating new addicts and almost assuredly new offenders. There was also one other victim of Bobby and Patty's addiction and cycle of criminal behavior that was especially affected, Bobby Jr. Given his parents' inability to care for him, Bobby Jr. ended up in the custody of the state. You and I were paying a great deal of money for another family to care for this child. 50% of the county's general fund goes to public safety. That's half of your tax dollar. Goes to prosecute and house criminals and keep tabs on them after they've served their time, and it's not cheap. The cost of housing Bobby in the penitentiary and county jail was no less than $42,000 a year. The cost of Bobby's treatment, housing, and mentor program was only $4,000, 1/10 of what you're paying to incarcerate him. The cost of Bobby Jr.'s foster care was $10,500 a year. The cost of Bobby Jr. returning to a functional family, $0. Fortunately, this story has a happy ending. Through the great work of one of our wonderful community partners, Central City Concern, Bobby and his family, due to their great courage, has a second chance. For Bobby, the turning point came when he connected with the recovery mentor funded by County General Fund that he met at the Hooper Detox Center, also supported by your tax dollar. Another human being who had been through rough and very similar hard life experience and successfully made it through to the other end, connected with him. For Patty, it was the Letting Oasis Center, a comprehensive residential treatment program for pregnant and parenting women of young children. And for both of them, it was a goal of becoming clean and sober so they could provide a safe and stable, nurturing environment for their son, Bobby Jr. Bobby's been sober for over 2.5 years. Patty for over 3. Bobby now has a job with the Portland Alternative Health Center, and Patty is going to school to earn her degree so she can work in counseling or corrections for juveniles. They are living and paying rent in Central City Concerns Drug and Alcohol Family Housing. Bobby has since paid back the state $10,500 to the state of Oregon for Bobby Jr.'s care, foster care. They are a family, a student, an employee, a mentor now, and a taxpayer. Central City Concern treats hundreds of people just like Bobby and Patty every single year, and let's just think for a moment what that means. Think of how many crimes have been averted. Think of how many times we've avoided victimization that's so terribly tragic. How much money have we saved along the way based on their great effort? These are your tax dollars at work. Bobby, Patty, and Bobby Jr. and Bobby's mentor, Randy Savisto, are all here with us today. They're sitting right here at this table. They're joined by Bruce Minot, who works at the Recovery Mentor Program, Dr. Dave Eisen, who's the director at the Portland Alternative Health Center, and our friend Ed Blackburn, the director of Health and Recovery Services for Central City Concerned. Will you all please offer a round of applause for their courage and their progress. And hope you all get a look at this handsome young man over here. It's this kind of important work that we really love doing at the county. There are countless success stories of people living with their addiction and mental illness through ongoing treatment rather than costlier hospitalization or jail. There are many young people that are now off the streets, in permanent housing, back in school, or on jobs as a result of our very effective homeless youth continuum. And remember, 25% of the new local personal income tax dollar is going to support these individuals and families, just like Bobby's. The solution to our local ills was, I hope you all know, an unprecedented partnership among government, school districts, teachers, seniors and disability advocates, public safety community, the business community, and most notably the parents of this community. When the Board of County Commissioners referred ballot measure 2648 in March of this year, we were responding directly to community demand. And I want to thank my colleagues, one of which is here with us today, for their courage and bravery in sending this measure to the ballot. Commissioner Maria Rojo DeSteffi is here. Commissioner Serena Cruz. Commissioner Lonnie Roberts from a tougher part of our county, and Commissioner Lisa Nato, who really came up with the idea of the daughter of ballot measure 28. We all knew that we simply had too much to lose. The City of Portland, local businesses, and Portland teachers stepped up to address the immediate crisis of the shortest school year in the nation with extraordinary sacrifice and generosity, and many of them businesses are getting their bills just this week, so I mean generosity. All the while, the parent community organized itself into HOPE, Help Out Public Education, and they kept the community dialogue focused on the importance of public schools to our nation's future and the economy. As an active parent who'd spent years lobbying the legislature for adequate funding, I was compelled by their message and impressed by their efforts. We just couldn't, in good conscience, write off a group of children and wait for the economy to recover, to improve, and wait for the state legislature to fulfill its fundamental responsibility to fund public schools. It was not an easy decision to ask taxpayers to consider raising their own taxes to ensure that this community met its basic needs. And as Margaret Mitchell says, death and taxes and childbirth, there's never a convenient time for any of them. But frankly, again, we just couldn't afford the alternative. We had to restore the ability to prepare our children, like Bobby Jr., for the college and the workforce. We had to maintain public safety to keep this community safe. And we had to preserve our safety net capacity to support seniors and people who literally just had no place else to go. With the successful passage of ballot measure 2648, it really was the work of extraordinary, dedicated community people. And I'd like to thank all of you in the room that were involved in that effort, especially the City Club of Portland and other civic, community, and business organizations that actively supported the measure. I'm just so very proud of my hometown. And now we're being looked to from all around the state as a model for how to bring the community together and discuss how to get this job done. Resources from this measure will fund the very treatment programs that helped Bobby and his family make a new life for themselves. Funds from this measure will also go to Bobby Jr.'s school, Bridger Elementary, to ensure that he gets the education he needs. We've said it before, but let's say it again, public education is the greatest investment any community can make. Most elected officials and most voters proclaim that education is their top priority. But rarely do we have a legitimate opportunity to actually walk our talk. In Salem, most of the leadership is still down there looking for money under rocks, insisting that the state can't afford an additional tax burden. But we should be encouraged that with the recent commitments of the governor to increase funding for schools, and certain legislators, including most of the Multnomah County delegation, are willing to look for new revenues to fund education and other services. So let me say this clearly. You may get some of your local tax dollar back. The governor's recent proposal of $5.3 billion, up from 4.8, is still underfunding education statewide according to the quality education model. But it is a start, and if they get to 5.3 without dramatically defunding other important services, we will reduce this new tax obligation. There's also a movement to seek out new dedicated funds for Oregon schools, but it's not a new movement, you all know that. It's something that advocates like the Coalition for School Funding Now have been working on for years, and it's just about time it actually happened. The state's job is to fund public schools and develop a responsible proposal, permanent, dedicated, that works for schools and taxpayers. And this has to occur before the end of our 3-year local tax. I will lend my active support to such a proposal and do everything in my power to help make that happen. The Board of County Commissioners, in partnership with local school districts, is committed to providing every child in the county with a quality and meaningful educational experience. We recognize that our schools are the linchpin in our community, and without good schools, as you all know, the quality of our life, our national reputation, and our economic vitality is at huge risk. We recognize the importance of community schools and what that means to the success of families and vice versa. And that's why we're developing a series of frameworks. Now stay with me here. I know the word framework sounds boring, but it's really important stuff to ensure the health and achievement of kids and families. The school age policy framework is the latest of those. Multnomah County has a rich and long history of working very closely with local schools and community-based providers. We provide school-based services in health through our school-based health centers, in mental health, and other services that support academic achievement through programs like Schools Uniting Neighborhoods, the Sun School program. We're actively looking at ways to target our services, to improve access and delivery, to align them with other jurisdictions, and to provide a universal touch to every school in the region, in the county. We're also looking to do a better job in providing culturally competent and culturally specific services to kids and families countywide. If a child isn't achieving, it isn't just about what's happening in a school classroom. It's also about what's happening at home. Just think for a moment about what Bobby Jr. may have faced when he went home years ago. It is hard work to identify the barriers of student achievement and family success, and it's even harder to provide them with opportunities and skills to overcome those barriers. But that's exactly what we do at Multnomah County every day, and we'll continue to improve that effort through the school age policy framework. And yet again, this is an example of how we use your tax dollars, I believe, very well. I was sworn into a full 4-year term as county chair just last January, and I had 3 immediate goals for my administration. One was to address the school funding crisis. The second, to make progress on PERS reform. And third, to reform the business income tax. Who would have thought only six short months later that we could say that with the help of so many people that we've really made some great progress. In terms of school funding, the voters certainly helped us out with that one. But it's not only the Multnomah County kids that I'm concerned with, it's all Oregon children. And that's why I'll continue to work with the governor, individual legislators, to work to increase funding for schools, no later than before the next biennium. And again, if we get more money for schools without it adversely affecting other services that serve families like Bobby's, we'll happily lower the burden of this local income tax for Multnomah County residents. The cost of PERS has been an increasing burden for our county and for jurisdictions across the state. Multnomah County has been at the table pounding our fists about PERS since the very beginning. We were one of the primary litigants against the PERS board that resulted in a ruling that spurred the attention and action of the Oregon legislature that we believe is now heading for real true reform and that will save taxpayers money and employers money. And it'll help fund programs like we've been talking about. And I believe in righting the wrongs of the PERS board, we will be able to offer our employees the benefit package, retirement package they deserve. Now let's talk about the business income tax. Let me be clear. Here's the problem. The business income tax was created in the 1970s. Like disco and Burt Reynolds, it's an outdated relic of those days. Sorry, Burt, I dish you on that one. With the economy, the economy was very localized at that time. It doesn't make sense now in a regional marketplace and a global economy that we now operate in. Multnomah County has experienced multi-year declines in business income tax revenues, and this has been one of the leading causes of our budget challenges. No other county in the state has this tax. It's only a short ride in a moving van to avoid it without losing any market presence or customers. Additionally, a good accountant or a good lawyer can help any business, I hate to say this out loud, avoid this complex tax. Right now, we have a replacement strategy for the business income tax that we're testing. We'll find out through an informational return process what the exact impact really is to each individual business and how much revenue really can be generated by it to support these very important services. We are being hyper-vigilant in assessing the impact on jobs in any business tax structure. While we're committed to finding the right local reform package, the ultimate solution lies with state tax reform. State tax reform should include eliminating indefensible tax breaks and a concerted effort to restructure the corporate tax, income tax for the entire state, a conversation we would like to participate in assertively. Economic development and job growth should be everyone's priority. We need to keep people working in this community, and I make a personal pledge to do everything on my part to help in that effort. If a reasonable, responsible corporate income tax rate was established and revenues found their way to this community, I would seriously consider leading the charge to eliminate the business income tax altogether. And speaking of taxes, again, I look forward to the day that the Board of County Commissioners and I can eliminate this newly approved 3-year temporary income tax. As I've mentioned, it might be sooner than 3 years if the state steps up. We're going to be extremely cautious in responding to the state. Even if they promise more money for schools today, will they hold a series of special sessions and we'll lose money along the way for very important services that we rely on here locally. Let there be no mistaking it, though. If the state provides more resources to our community, or if we collect more than what we had originally projected, you will pay less tax. I made a promise to voters that we would deliver on certain basic levels of service for schools and public safety and human services, and I am unfailing in that commitment, and we are up for the task. The taxpayer has made an important investment in this community's future, and we have an obligation to deliver on that. We can't be distracted by new grandiose schemes or initiatives at this time. We must concentrate our efforts on making this tax, the collection of it, simple and as painless as possible for every taxpayer. During the campaign, I made countless fundraising phone calls, spoke to groups of all kinds, knocked on my neighbors' doors, as many of you did. Even though the need was very clear, I heard a certain degree of skepticism, as you can imagine, from the many I talked to. Some voters were bored with the whole thing. Others understood the crisis and knew that this was the right solution at this time. Some wrestled with the costs to their own families, and some were outright suspicious, imagine this, of government spending. The campaign was tough, but now the hard work of delivering and making ourselves accountable to the voter that every tax dollar is being spent to the highest and best use has now begun. Over the next 3 years, by doing exactly what we said we'd do, we can once again, hopefully, run the risk of giving government a good name. To Bobby and his family and countless others that depend on our services, and I must say that the community can literally not afford for us not to do a good job at this, and that's what you can rely on me for. So, Tanner, my job is definitely not boring, and I'm here to take any questions you have this afternoon. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Diane. One of the benefits of being a City Club member is the privilege of asking questions of our guests. So we'll invite City Club members to line up behind the microphone as Tamsin Moselle, our board host, asks the first question of Diane Linn. And we ask you to please hold your questions to 30 seconds and make sure they're a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. I think that we're all very excited about the fact that Multnomah County voters did provide the money for services, and I noticed that this week the County Commission did finalize the budget for the coming year, and I noticed that reported in the Oregonian that during your last meeting you still, even though we have added these revenues, there were still tough decisions to make. For instance, it reported that some programs still got eliminated or cut because there still isn't the same amount of funding that there were several years ago. Things like the program Reenter into a Successful Education program, while others that seemed just as worthy did get some funding restored, things like for domestic violence victims or AIDS prevention or for housing assistance. So could you talk to us a little about what your criteria is when you see all of these worthy programs that need it for making those kinds of cuts or those decisions?
A very wonderful and thoughtful question. The Board of County Commissioners and I did work very hard to finalize our budget, and we did have to make some very, very tough decisions. We were facing a $24 million cut and cumulatively over several years, over $60 million of reductions. The ITax, and please let me use that term as shorthand for the new personal income tax, provided about $32 million back. The criteria that we're using at this point in time is one that has to do with the frameworks that I mentioned before. What we're trying to do is target our resources in a continuum of care that makes some semblance of sense, where we look at gaps, where we look at where our dollars can be leveraged, where we can apply them in a way that really gains the best end result. The programs that are managed through or right directly with school districts, we're going to be looking to the districts in East Multnomah County where we provided an ADMW distribution of resources to see if they can help pick up some of those programs. We did put back into the budget some critical domestic violence programs, clearinghouse vouchers for homelessness, some pieces that the board members really thought were an important part of our safety net in our effort to keep people from literally floundering on the streets. Remember, while the ITax proposal prevents cuts to the public school system, it did substantially restore public safety, but only partially restored the most crucial cuts in health and human services. We're going to face some additional hard times, but you can count on this board, and we've got a great partnership going right now to really analyze where to target those dollars to get the absolute best value for them. We will defund programs that we just cannot sustain, and that will happen. That's a tough part of our job. We will do that. And we're also working to consolidate our inner functions so we get, again, the highest efficiencies through shared services efforts and all kinds of efforts like that. So I hope that answers your question. Sir?
Reverend Mandel, City Club member. Hi, Diane. I'd like to shift for a moment to the justice system. As a member of the District Attorney's Citizen Budget Advisory Committee and also the West Side Community Court Advisory Committee, I've been painfully aware of what has happened because of the cuts in budget to the justice system. And I must express thanks. I had the note about the restoration of those services. So from limping along, we're now functioning at a slow walk, which is a major improvement. Question I have for you, are you planning to reopen the Restitution Center on 11th Avenue?
Thank you for the question. And again, we substantially restored pieces of the public safety system. I do want to acknowledge Sheriff Bernie Justo is here with us today, a wonderful member of our team. District Attorney Mike Shrunks played a huge role, and Joanne Fuller, who I know is in the audience, our community justice team did a fantastic job this year pulling the pieces together. There's still a missing piece that's crucial to the whole system, and that's funded at the state level, indigent defense and the court systems, closing down on Fridays. My God, we've got some serious problems as it relates to priorities at the state level. We're doing what we can do locally. In answer to your specific question, we are planning to restructure the Restitution Center to have it be a much more aggressive drug and alcohol mental health treatment facility under Joanne Fuller's supervision. We can bring down some federal matching grant money in that program very aggressively because it's not a jail setting. It'll be kind of a hybrid combination of what was the interchange program in the Washington County jail system, bringing it into downtown Portland. And part of what we promised in the levy, the public safety levy of many years ago, that we would provide more aggressive drug and alcohol treatment. And again, Bobby and his colleagues could tell you how effective that can be. I do want to share one quick vignette that they told me about a couple weeks ago. You know, jail is not a fun place to be anymore. And I was amazed by that comment. First of all, you got to wonder, when was it fun?
When was it?
And secondly, I'm glad it's not fun, and I have come to really embrace the prospect that people enter the system so much because of their drug and alcohol and mental health conditions. So we're going to deal with that problem at that center, and we hope, again, and I know you're a part of the downtown community, that we can work with the community to make sure it stays safe and effective.
Yes. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Hi, Diane. Chris
Hi, Chris.
Smith, club member. Want to ask a question about the administration of our new tax. I work for a Fortune 500 company that contracts payroll processing to a national company. They're probably the best case for being able to administer withholding for our new tax, and I'm a supporter of the tax. But they tell me they're not going to start withholding until the fourth quarter of this year. So if the best case is that I better be putting some dollars away in a piggy bank, or I'm going to be faced with a big bill next year, and a lot of people probably aren't even in that good a case. How is the county going to ease the shock for people who may find that they have to pay, several hundred, several $1,000s next April?
Well, again, an excellent question, Chris. I'm terribly concerned about this because even if we do a fantastic job at offering up the ability to deduct, and we're going to be providing that to our employees starting July 1, and remember, it's a double deduction for the second half of the calendar year because this applies back to the 1st of January. We're going to encourage as many employers as possible to set up deduction opportunities. Most of us would just as soon the tax be deducted and not see it. And that's the best alternative. The other option is to encourage setting it aside, saving it, and again, some people are good at that and some people are not, and we're going to try to have some pretty aggressive communication to encourage planning ahead. Once the second year's in place, I think it'll be more a matter of deduction and planning, but we're going to work very hard to give people options, provide them with a quarterly payment schedule, which is something else we can do, and again, set up a system. Dave Boyer's in the back and working very hard to try to set up a variety of options. And I believe, Dave, there's an online payment process that you can also use And again, if people don't have access to internet at their home, they can go to our Multnomah County library system, provides fantastic services there. But we're going to try to make every element of this as easy as possible and hope that there aren't a substantial number of people that don't plan ahead and get a big bill at the end of the year.
Will you have payment plans for those kind of folks?
I imagine, Dave, we probably will, but again, we have to administer it very fair and again, as simply as possible.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Hello, Justin Gottlieb, City Club member. Thank you for coming. You've laid out a great agenda. And my question is it seems every government body right now has all the answers. I want to know in your mind and in Multnomah County's mind, what is the question that you're asking yourself personally, professionally, every time you vote on an initiative or say, what is your agenda for the next 3 years in terms of, how do we make Multnomah County great, or how do we solve the problem? What is at the top of your mind in terms of questions?
Well, there's usually so many, and I think I'd have to settle on, off the top of my head, how's this going to work for the kids, ultimately? What's it really going to mean to them, not just next year, but 5 years from now and 10 years from now? And I go home to a couple myself, and they keep me honed in that question. And I think, in a global sense, that would have to be my answer. That relates to public policy direction on a lot of different, almost every area. So I think that'd be the answer to my question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Milius, City Club member. It seems to me that we are suffering the effects long-term of Measure 5 and its spawn. The question I have is a philosophic one. What do you say to those who seem to be holding sway right now in Washington and in Salem, who see government as the enemy and are trying to starve it into ineffectiveness? What do you say to them?
Well, I say that I want them to watch this community in action for the next 3 years. I want them to see what we're able to do here. I want to be able to compare what would have happened if we had defunded the ability to intervene with people with severe mental illness, as we would have had to do had this tax not passed. The costs of hospitalization in jail, there would have been some serious devastation in this community. I think, unfortunately, for other parts of the state and the country, that's going to happen. I want them to watch us and just see if we can deliver on what we said we'd do. And that includes reducing the tax if we can, because the burden to the taxpayer is a factor. But I think we have an opportunity. We were down in Linn County just earlier this week talking to them about the prospect of them following the model that we've developed here. Again, we have, and you all here at the City Club are in a position to help promote this. We have an opportunity to show people that government can do what it is we're supposed to do and spend money well. I refuse to accept that this premise that somehow we can't manage resources. Oh, yes, we can. We are up for the task, and I'm happy to open our books. Thank you. I'm happy to answer people's question about the management of a unionized workforce. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. I think we can do it, and I hope people are watching what we can do here in Multnomah County.
Hi, Diane. I'm Susan Pierce, member. I'm speaking both as a neighborhood chair and as a nurse, and you answered part of my question. You've already touched on some of this. How long is the line behind me? And that has to do with the relative costs that now, in this crisis, of decreasing medical benefits to people and then finding ourselves paying for hospitalizations or incarcerations for people who aren't receiving their meds, especially their psychotropic meds, and aren't receiving their drug and alcohol treatment. And an example I heard yesterday in a meeting was that Portland Police were saying that because of the closure of Hooper Detox during the daytime, which I'm hearing is going to be opening back up, but will take a while to get back in gear, they were taking people whom they might have taken to Hooper to the emergency department because they have to take them somewhere. It has to be more expensive. And if you have time, if you could go beyond what you're doing now in the short term and expand into how we can do that when we're in a better financial situation and work on those preventive issues.
Well, I think the best preventative dollar is spent getting kids to graduate from high school. When they achieve graduation from high school and the stage is set for them for higher education, they're exponentially more likely to achieve higher levels and not slump into behaviors that are high risk. So that's for me, and that's why I talk to you all about the school-age policy framework and the importance of public education. So that's kind of a positive investment. Let me touch on 3 areas that we've been working really hard on. One is, again, drug and alcohol treatment. We've discussed that a lot. Mental health treatment and making sure that we can manage people in a much more aggressive community mental health model that we've established here through Dr. Peter Davidson, now under the leadership of Patty Pate. John Ball in my office led an extraordinary turnaround in the mental health system to make sure that we could manage through people's ability to actually reach recovery as opposed to just a maintenance, really unacceptable lifestyle. The other area is our homelessness population, and for us at the county, it's the homeless youth population that we're really working to invest again our dollars carefully so that we can, again, 2 goals: keep kids safe and off the streets. And this does apply to homeless families and homeless singles, male and female. While we're in huge partnership with the city of Portland on these issues, so that they can be safe, but we can also get them on the track to succeeding in getting off the streets, out of our systems, and becoming productive members of the community, as Bobby and his family have become. So it's quite a public policy engineering project, and I'm always open to ideas and suggestions about how to do it better, but we're working with, I think, some of the best and the brightest in the business at Multnomah County to make some of those things happen, together with our community partners, again, Central City and many other groups, Cascadia Behavioral Health. There's just an array of people that are, I think, really committed to this work. I have to mention housing. I can see out there, we are having to figure out how to house people. You can have great programs, great treatment, get people on a drug regimen that's really working for them, but if they have no place to live, the whole thing falls apart. So the importance of housing as a linchpin in this whole conversation is going to be a very important discussion, and with this federal government, state government kind of stepping away, disinvesting, locally again, we may have to step up to the challenge and figure out how to make sure people are housed in good environments, and that could make a big difference. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
John Moltmann, City Club member, thank you for coming today. Really appreciate your support for the treatment of the mentally ill and for chemical dependency issues. As you very eloquently noted, 2648 is going to be a great help to that. A lot of research today indicates that mental illness is a genetically inherited condition that arrives by no fault of the sufferer, that is based, has a physical basis, either a chemical imbalance in the brain or other things that really are not that person's fault, and that with treatment, of course, these people can recover and do very well. I'd like to ask you a 2-fold question. One is, what can we do to break down the stigma of mental illness so that people in the public understand on a greater level that this is a physical illness like anything else that can be treated, that these are human beings who deserve our compassion? And secondly, what can be done beyond 2648 for a long-term funding solution to really make sure that the safety net is there for these people?
Well, it's a great question. The stigma around mental health is one of those challenges that is very hard to deal with, because you want to respect the privacy of people who are coping with that illness. I think any of us would want that. One of the reasons I wanted to feature the Recovery Association project is because of the courage of these people to step up and say, I am the face of recovery. I'm willing to tell you what I've done, and we've talked about it here today, and I'm here to show you what's possible, what the turnaround can look like. In mental illness, if we can put a face to it, I think that could advance the effort to diminish the stigma. While I think it's harder in that arena. We'd like to work on how to do that. We're also going to be working on the public image of homeless kids and why they're on the streets the way they are, and what's caused that outcome to happen, because it doesn't happen by mistake. It happens for a whole variety of reasons. So it's a tough question, but I think we at Multnomah County can be actively involved in the stigma issue. For longer range questions of how to support the safety net for health and human services, including mental health, addiction, homelessness, I think we got to start talking regionally. Multnomah County has been shouldering the burden of managing a population of people that are attracted to a urban core area. Downtown Portland's a kind of a good, fun place to be for kids. It's a place people can be anonymous. It's a place to come. And we, in the past, through fee-for-service and other structures financially, were able to manage that. Well, now we can't anymore. Our taxpayers, all of you, me, all of you, are going to be paying to manage this population, and I think we need to get the other counties in our region to step up more aggressively and work with us on a regional plan to start taking on some of these issues regionally. If we can do that and provide a more comprehensive safety net, and that, again, includes housing, because without housing in some of the other communities in our region, again, people will end up back here. And that will be too much of a burden on this community. So we've talked to legislators. We're starting to have some very productive conversations regionally. And I think that's the mode of the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hello, Diane. My name is Ruth Curry. I'm a member of City Club. As a retired clinical social worker, I appreciated your comments on what the county is working under our circumstances today for the youth. But I'm also concerned, like the previous speaker, about mental health, and particularly mental health of elders, because that population also does not, there's a lot of myths about mental illness, and what are we going to be able to do in the future in working with that population?
Well, this is a huge topic. A whole City Club year could be spent on the implications of an aging population. 10 additional years of life we're all hopefully going to live demographically is going to change the face of a lot of these discussions, and Ruth is a wonderful leader in this whole area. Commissioner Rojo has been really advocating, together with the rest of us, on how we deal with a variety of lifestyle issues as it relates to seniors, not just the crucial care around ideally keeping them in their own homes as long as possible, managing prescription drugs and basic needs people need, but what about lifestyle issues? And a big problem is elder abuse. And I hate to tell you all that we've got a serious, very silent issue out there with seniors getting abused, sometimes by family members. And it's just a heartbreaker. That can cause, I think, depression and isolation and mental health issues for seniors, and I think we're going to need to get our head around some strategies for how to reach out to people, get people living in communities where they're not isolated. I think the kind of baby boomers moving into that, I don't want to reflect on anybody in the room, but moving into that era are going to demand a community life that supports their needs. And one of those needs will be for services that relate to pretty severe problems that can come up late in life too. And again, it's going to be a topic that's going to continue to escalate as we watch these demographic shifts happen. Chris again?
Well, hi again,
Welcome
Diane.
back.
I never get bored with tax policy.
My God. I want to tell you to get a life, Chris. I know you have one.
I want to follow up on your statement about the business income tax.
Okay.
And yeah, I agree with your analysis that it's an antiquated tax and needs to be overhauled. What I also hear is that it's a tax that causes Multnomah County to be uncompetitive in attracting business. I've heard similar comments about the business activity tax that's been proposed statewide, that it would make Oregon uncompetitive. In fact, it seems like in the global economy, any tax that isn't global is a competitive disadvantage for the jurisdiction that imposes it. Yet businesses consume services from government. What are the approaches to fairly tax businesses for the services they receive and at the same time not hurt our economic development?
Well, herein lies the challenging question of the day. I hope the governor, and trust that he will, gather the best and the brightest thinkers in the state to figure this one out. It's a very delicate balance between the burden to individual taxpayers, homeowners, in any tax structure, balanced with business and what they should be ponying up, and how that affects the economics of the state is an extraordinarily complex question. And I'm glad you're not bored with it, because we really do have to keep talking about it. And I hope more people like you step up to have that conversation. It has to happen at the state level, and we have to figure out again how we, remember, Multnomah County, the core of the city of Portland, is the economic engine of this state. And to put this particular community at higher risk, we haven't seen job growth in downtown Portland. It's not happening. I hear stories, anecdotally as they are, people moving, leaving. Tax is just is tipping them over the edge. And so I think we're different. You know, the argument does hold true for us, I think, but we want to be careful about it. But the statewide discussion has got to be done very clearly and very diligently, and I'm terribly concerned that we don't overreact to random proposals that are flipped out on the table by any number of sources that take us into a tailspin discussion that isn't productive. This is critically important discussion. It's going to make or break Oregon's future, and again, I hope you stay engaged and keep us focused on the questions. Thank you. Sir?
I'm Gus Mattersdorf from the City Club. I want to also say that I've been in education here in the city of Portland since I moved here some 40 years ago. I have a kind of philosophical question, I think. It seems to me that you can't get a good education if you're not healthy. And therefore, it seems to me it follows that the health problems of the community ought to take precedence over the educational emphasis. Now, you have devoted the bulk of your speech and the bulk of the public discussion before the last vote was on how badly we need to improve our educational facilities. It seems to me that the health aspect of the community's concerns have been neglected to some extent, and that they are prerequisite to an education, to educational concerns. I wondered how you react to that.
Well, as Paul, and based on Paul's question, I can tell you that philosophically, I generally support universal health care approaches. This country is not heading in that direction. And while I'm, again, very proud of our community for stepping up on some issues and taking matters into our own hands, the state of Oregon essentially did that to some extent with the Oregon Health Plan. And now that's being modified, changed, reduced, and we'll have to see what comes out of the legislature as it relates to the Oregon Health Plan. If I were to suggest to you here today that we prioritize, health care coverage to the, entire population, every child, which I believe should be the case, I would probably bankrupt you all if we tried to take on that burden. What we do at Multnomah County under the leadership of Lillian Shirley and company is we provide primary health care clinics, safety net health care clinics. We go to where the kids are. We have clinics in the schools to deal with what teenagers present with, and one of them is reproductive health questions, which can be very important. We've been very effective at getting involved in that. We run a very effective public health department in the purest sense of that term, and that's what we should be doing. That's my answer to your question. I think we're doing as well as we can do on health care issues in this community. No one should go without it. If they absolutely need it, we will provide services for them. And again, it is somewhat of a regional question. I'd like to take it out to a tri-county discussion again to get them more engaged in the discussion. But this is a tough national question that I don't know the solution sits right here today as much as I'd like to be able to solve that one too. Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Carla Powell, and I recently returned to Multnomah County after living in Chicago for the last 7 years. I've been back for a few months.
Welcome home.
Thanks. And I guess my question is sort of paradoxical in nature, because I was convinced and still am somewhat convinced that the problems that this county is facing are problems that are being faced virtually everywhere, and that we may just be a bellwether. Like, just one small example is my understanding is the first red flag about the problems with the schools was when they were letting go of the long-term custodians and replacing them with minimum wage workers. Now, this is just something I heard from a school librarian, whereas one of my friends in Chicago was telling me they're starting to do the very same thing in Chicago. And I also had heard that the schools in Denver shortened their school week before we did. These are things I did not necessarily directly read or whatever. But in any event, so it does seem like our problems are, we're getting such bad press, and hopefully now we'll start to get good press, but yet I have been really struck after being gone for 7 years by how visible the deterioration has been, like all the vacancies in downtown office spaces. And so I'm just sort of, I myself feel somewhat confused about whether we are worse off than, are we as bad off as the press we're getting, that we are really worse off than other parts of the country.
I think we have a serious problem here. Is my mic on? I think so. In the state of Oregon, it has to do with our tax structure, which is that we rely just dramatically on the personal income tax alone, together with property taxes. We don't have that classic third stool, and it's caused a huge impact to, this is the worst crisis in public services in modern days in the state of Oregon. So I do think the problem is very, very serious here. And we've got to, again, go back to the state level and figure out how to fix, and it might be undoing some of the damage about Measure 5. But the national reputation is very important. And I think what we have an opportunity to do is show again that when the citizens say, I'm willing to make this investment, and we show that all boats rise and people are going to do better and we can have better outcomes. Joe DeLisandro's job is hopefully easier, to invite people to Oregon, invite people to this community, see that it's a place that's safe and wonderful to be in. I think we can do that, but unfortunately, it's kind of double the effort for us here locally to hold it together for this community in a state that's got a serious tax structure problem. So it is bad for us here, and it's going to take everything we've got to improve it at the state level.
I think Gil's question will have to be the last today.
Gil?
That's right. Hi, I'm Gil Johnson, City Club member, and Bobby Jr.'s Taekwondo instructor. And he's a wonderful kid. He performs Taekwondo generally a couple years above his age level, and he rarely has to do push-ups for goofing off.
Very impressive, sir.
I'm also in the Sun, involved in the Sun program teaching Taekwondo, and I think that's a great program. It gives a great, amount of structure and activity to kids after school rather than being left alone or doing something that could be not so constructive. There's just not enough of them. And with the Children's Initiative that Dan Salzman came up with last year and we all supported, is there more money for that in the county, or does that just get thrown in with everything else and we still don't have enough money?
Well, I'm really glad you asked the question. It's the final question here today, and thank you all again for your attention and kind support. The Schools United Neighborhood Programs is a personal favorite of mine. It's very hard. The simplest way to explain it is it's two-pronged. You've got the use of the school building as a community asset, turning that facility into a place that we can actually use and benefit from and have activities and supports going on there, and also coupling to support the principal and the teachers, letting them do their job to focus on academic achievement, and our team come in and do our job in supporting kids and families to deal with the issues that are hanging up their ability to focus in school, if that's food, if it's unemployment, if it's support for a family that's managing a group of kids. My God, that's one of the hardest things anyone can do, and that's what the Sun School program does. We, through the school age framework, we are adjusting the whole program. It's really a strategy, it's not a program, and combining it, aligning it, and integrating it with other school-based services, school-aligned services countywide. In every region, there's going to be 6 new regions. We're going to work with the caring communities, and it's going to be expanded to quite a few more schools. And Lorenzo's out there. I think we're talking about 42 schools will have a concerted Sun School type program in their schools, and that's a market increase. We'd like to go universal, And if the economy recovers and if we can target the money well and show that we're keeping kids in school and showing academic achievement, especially in those schools that we all know aren't doing as well as they should be doing, and there's a whole lot of kids of color in those schools, and that's wrong. That's going to be our first target, is the schools that are high risk. And then ultimately, we hope to really touch all schools. In answer to your question about the Children's Initiative, I'm not sure if we're going to get more money from that yet. The jury's still out. And thank you again all very much for your kind attention.